is the Hello and welcome to my text motion graphics tutorial for Adobe Premiere Pro. In this tutorial, I will give you an overview of the download files, then I will walk you through the installation process and explain exactly how to use the different motion graphic templates, and in the end, I will show you 2 ways to save. Hello and welcome to my text motion graphics tutorial for Adobe Premiere Pro. In this tutorial, I will give you an overview of the download files, then I will walk you through the installation process and explain exactly how to use the different motion graphic templates, and in the end, I will show you 2 ways to save your custom adjustments. So let's get started. So as soon as you downloaded your file, the first thing you're going to do is to just unzip it. Then we're going to see what's inside of it. We have 2 different folders and 1 PDF file. The first folder is the templates folder. In here, we are going to find the motion graphic templates themselves. You can see it here with the Mogurt extension. These are all the different motion graphic templates. In the second folder, we can find the different sound effects for each graphic. We are not really going to need them because the sound effects are already in the motion graphic templates themselves, but I thought it's still nice to just have them in case you need them. And last but not least, you can find the PDF file with the tutorial, and if you just click on the Watch Now button, you can always come back to the video that you're watching right now. So before we start with the installation, let's first talk about some requirements. Motion graphic templates can either be built in Premiere Pro or in After Effects, but any advanced motion graphic template will be built in After Effects as it just offers way more options, like for example media replacement, which is also a core element of my text motion graphics. So as my Mogurts are built in After Effects, you also need to have After Effects installed on your system. You don't need to open or access it, but while using the Mogurts in Premiere Pro, After Effects will be silently running in the background. Another thing which is important to mention is that my Mogurts only work properly if the language of your program is set to English. So if you are in another language, just switch it to English. So when you're in Premiere Pro, it makes sense to switch to another workspace called Graphics, and in there you're going to find the panel for Essential Graphics, which is basically the place where everything is going to happen when it comes to motion graphic templates. If you still don't find that window, you can head up here to Window and then go down to Essential Graphics, and then you will also have that panel as well. When it comes to importing motion graphic templates, there are multiple ways, but I think that 2 options are the best ones to do it. The first one is to just take the different motion graphic templates that you want to import and then just drag and drop them onto the panel, and then they are going to be imported automatically. So if you just search in here, for example, for NC, then it is going to show the different motion graphic templates that we imported. If you import this way, Premiere Pro will create a copy of those motion graphic templates at a different location on your system. Here are the file paths in case you want to know where those are. But in my opinion, option 2 is even better. For this one, you're just going to select the overall folder of the motion graphic templates, and then you're going to copy that folder to another location, which is going to stay the same all the time. So I myself have a library here on my internal system storage, and then I just, for example, navigate to Programs, Premiere, and then to Motion Graphic Templates. And then in here, you're just going to paste the folder, and then you have the folder in here. After that, you're going to head back into Premiere Pro, and you're going to go up to these small 3 lines up here, and you're going to click on Manage Additional Folders. Then you're going to head down here and click on Add, and you're going to navigate to the folder which you added to your own library. It's important that this folder really stays at the same location all the time, because if you import it and then you move it to somewhere else, then it's not going to be linked. Then you just click on Select Folder, and you're going to see that it now shows up in your additional folders. You just press OK. So I think that option number 2 is the best way of importing, because then you have the drop-down menu for the different packs, which is quite convenient, and also you don't have to search for the different motion graphic templates by typing in keywords. So now that we have all of the different Mogurts installed, let's actually talk about how to use them. So the first thing you're going to do is obviously just pick the one that you want to use. In my case, it would be simple text. And then you just drag and drop that motion graphics template onto the timeline, and you see that the text shows up here. Just in case you're wondering, I just have a gray background here so that we can see a separation between the box and the background. So as soon as you drag that motion graphics template onto your timeline, Premiere Pro is going to create an additional folder down here called Motion Graphics Template Media. In there, it saves a copy of that motion graphics template, and that same folder is also created right next to your project file. And basically Premiere Pro just does that to save you. In case you're opening that project on another computer, you still have a copy of that motion graphics template, and it's not going to be linked to the same folder where you imported it from. Another thing which is important to mention is that all of my Mogurts are in 4K. So right now we're on a 4K timeline. You see everything works perfectly, but if we go to a 1080p sequence and then drag and drop that onto there, then you see that the text is much bigger because it is 4K. So what you're going to do is to just right click on it, then you're going to click on scale to frame size, and then you are at the same starting point. But for this tutorial, we're going to work in the 4K sequence. When it comes to the settings of the motion graphic templates, they have a very similar structure and similar settings, but also obviously sometimes there are a few more or a few less settings depending on the use case. So we're actually going to go through all of the different use cases, and then I'm just going to mention what is different to the other ones which I already explained. And yeah, as you see up here, there's a browse and an edit tab inside the essential graphics panel, and the browse tab is always just for searching for the motion graphic templates, while the edit tab is obviously to edit it. The first settings that most of the moguls have are obviously the text settings. Here you can just click on the text and you can type in your text, and then it's going to automatically show up in the box, and also the box is going to scale to the text itself. Here you can just select the font you want to use. You can also just hover over it and scroll down, and then you're also just going to change the font. Here you have a selection of the different font styles that the font offers. Like if we go back, for example, to the default font, here you can see we have quite a lot of different font styles, and also here you have other features like, for example, font bold, font italic, and also something which is called all caps. So if that is activated, all of the letters are going to be in capital. If you deactivate that, then you can also just use lower letters as well. Then down here we have the size slider. So basically with this one you can just change the size of the text. Then we have a position slider. You can just change the X and Y position values. Then we have the tracking slider. With this one you can basically determine the distance between all of the different letters. And next up we have the colors. So we have two different color options with this motion graphic template. One is the text color and one is the box color. Basically you just click on here, you can select the color with your color picker. Let's say we want to have red, and you just press OK. And then we go to the box color, and we can also select another color, let's say blue. You can also just type in your color code down here, and then you're just going to click OK again, and you see that we can change the color of the text. I'm just going to undo it now. Then the next thing are the settings. Here you can just determine overall settings. For example, you have a checkbox for round corners, and then you just have these round corners. That just gives you a lot of opportunities when it comes to customizing those text graphics to your own style, because some people want to have edgy corners, some people want to have round corners. So that's a really cool option. Next up we have shadow. So basically that activates a shadow behind the box. Then we also have a text box checkbox, and if you deactivate this one, then you see that you only have the text without the box. We only have that checkbox in the simple text and in the simple text row split, because these ones are basically for just basic text, and sometimes you don't want to have a box in them. But with all of the other motion graphic templates, you're going to have the box as well, because this is just the style of the animation. Then you see the next setting is the motion blur. When it comes to the motion blur, you can just check it, and you see if we go to the beginning of the animation, then now there's going to be a motion blur applied. It's very important to mention that the motion blur definitely requires a lot of performance. You still have to keep in mind that an After Effects project is running in the background when you use these motion graphic templates in Premiere Pro, and that's why it really makes sense to just activate the motion blur after you changed all of the other settings. So that's why we're just going to keep it off for now, and then we're going to go to the wiggle properties. So these settings just let you influence basically the overall shaking of the text is going to look like. You have a checkbox. If you want to use no wiggle at all, you can just deactivate that, and if we play it back now, you see that it's not moving at all. But if we turn on that wiggle and we play it back, then you see that we now have this sort of shake going on with the text. So the frequency slider lets you influence how quick it's going to shake. So if we bring that up and we play it back, then you see that it's shaking very quickly. Well, if we bring it down, then the text is going to shake a lot slower. With the amplitude, you can influence how strong it's going to shake. So basically how strong the position is going to change. If we bring that a lot up and we play it back, then you see that it's shaking very heavily. While if we bring that amplitude down, then you see that the shake is not as present as before. In my opinion, you can always just keep the default values for both the frequency and the amplitude, because I think that those are the best settings and I also use them all the time, but you still have the option to adjust them if you want to. Last but not least, we have the random seed. So if you change that slider, it's just going to randomize the animation in case the wiggle was not in the right position before that. And when we close the wiggle properties, we have one last setting, which is the animation out in seconds. So basically back here, you can just determine after how many seconds the out animation is going to take place. So right now by default, it is after 5 seconds, but you can just, basically drag that slider and you can adjust when it's going to animate out all the way up to 30 seconds. That's kind of like the maximum for most of the motion graphic templates, basically because we didn't want to overcrowd all of the timelines, because if you drag those motion graphic templates in from the browse feature, then it's going to be just like 30 seconds long. You can just adjust that value back here. You can also just type in a value, like for example 3. You can also type in a value with a comma in between, like for example 2,4. It's just going to show the rounded up value, but it actually uses the value that you put in. Like right now it is 2.4. If we, for example, use the default duration of 5 seconds, then we also automatically have the right sound effects attached to the motion graphics template already, which I think is a really good time saver because you don't have to import sound effects for the animation manually. But it's not possible to adjust those sound effects responsively. That's just a limitation of After Effects and Premiere Pro. So that's why you can adjust the out animation, for example, to 3 seconds, but then you have to adjust the sound effects manually. So what you're going to do is to just click on the motion graphics template with a right click, and then you're going to go to unlink. And that basically unlinks the video side from the audio side, and you can just edit them separately. So now you're going to go down here and you're just going to cut before the sound effect. You're just going to select the razor tool and you're going to cut. You can go back to the selection tool, and then you can just see where that out animation takes place. So it would be here, and then you just drag and drop it here, and then now you have the correct sound effects for your out animation. And then obviously you can also select all of those, cut them as well, and delete them, and now you have the proper text motion graphic with the sound effects applied as well. So now let's look at the next motion graphics template, which is the simple text row split. We're just going to drag and drop it onto the timeline, and then you see that we also have a simple text, but now with multiple lines. So all you got to do is just add text in here, like for example another line. And if you click outside of that text box, then you see that it automatically adds another line, and also it realigns the overall graphic. So that's really cool because it is completely responsive. If we just add another line in here, then you see that it will have a 5th line, and you can do that all the way up to 8 different lines. Then from here, it's basically the same as with simple text. You can change the font, you can change the size of all the different lines, and you can change the position, you can change the tracking, and so on. It's basically all the same. One thing which is different is that we now also have an alignment feature. So you're just going to select from the drop down which one you want to have, like for example left or right or center. And then another setting which is different is that we also now have an animation offset in frames. So if we go all the way to the in animation, you see that all of them animate in one after another. And now we can select an offset between those different boxes when they are going to appear. So if we increase those frames, you see that they're going to animate in a lot slower. They're going to animate in like this. So yeah, this is what the offset value is for here. And again, like I showed you before, you're just going to select the offset, you're going to select your animation out, unlink the layers, and then you're going to adjust your sound effects. Next up, we're going to take a look at the lower thirds. As you can see here, we have 3 different versions. One is with only text, one is with 2 lines and an icon, and one is with 3 lines and an icon. Let's first look at the one with only text. If we drag and drop that onto the timeline and we play it back, then you see that this is basically just a normal text lower thirds animation. And yeah, with those different menu openers, you can influence the different boxes. So the upper one is the top text and the lower one is the bottom text. Again, it's basically the same with all of the different text settings. And now you can also adjust here the size of only that one box. And the cool thing about those motion graphic templates is that they are completely responsive. So you can simply adjust the size of the bottom box, and as you see, the upper box is going to align responsively to that. If we go down to the settings, we also have an alignment option. So we also have right alignment if you want to use that. And all the time when the alignment changes, the animation is basically just mirrored to the other side so that it is shown correctly. For this one, I'm going to use left. And then we also have a distance slider. With that, you can determine the distance between those two boxes. And yeah, that's basically everything which is new to the other two Mogurts, but there are some new things when it comes to the lower thirds with 2 lines and 1 icon. Also, we're just going to drag and drop it onto the timeline, and as you see here, we now have lower thirds, but this time with an icon as well. And as you see here, it says drag your file here. That means that we have a media replacement feature in that motion graphics template. Again, if we look at the overall structure, yeah, it's quite simple to understand. We have the icon, the top text, the bottom text, and the overall settings and the out animation. The icon selection, there's a drop-down menu, and here you can select which icon you want to use. We have included 23 different icons already, which are like all sorts of different like social media icons, all the way back to like likes and notification. We have a shout out website, photo camera, all sorts of different icons. So these are going to cover most of the use cases, but if you want to use your own icons or logos, you can also do that. You just have to make sure to select your file, and then you're going to open up that small arrow here. And here is a placeholder where you just have to drag and drop your icon onto. So I just already imported a few graphics, and then you can just drag and drop it down here, and boom, we have our own icon shown in the box. You have a couple of transform possibilities here, like for example the scale and also like the position and stuff like that. But most of the time you don't really have to use those, because you're just going to use the icon size slider in order to adjust the scale of your logo. Because if you use the scaling up here, then it's going to mess around with overall limitations of that sequence, of that placeholder. So I just really recommend you to just use the slider down here. We can just select the colors as we would do with normal text. For example, we pick the color of the icon in red, or we do the box color in black, let's say. And if we don't want to change the color of the icon that we use ourselves, then we can also uncheck that tint icon checkbox, and it's not going to be tinted, but it just has the original color like before. That's basically everything when it comes to the icon. When it comes to the text, it's always the same as before. And when it comes to the settings here, we have a left alignment, we have a right alignment, and we also have a scale slider. So with that, you can just really easily scale the lower thirds altogether. The next motion graphic template is a chapter. You're just going to drag and drop it again. And this one really helps if you want to separate your videos into different chapters. So here you also basically just have 2 different text boxes, and here you can add the chapter that you're having, like for example, the second chapter, and then you can just add the name of the chapter. So let's say if it is a tutorial like this one, now would be how to use the graphics. Something like that, you just put it in and then you have a chapter. And also again here, it just responsively adjusts so that you have the right alignment right from the start. Then the next one is called name and title, and that one is really cool if you want to introduce a person for the first time. So every time I have new people in my videos, then I just add one of these motion graphic templates, and here I can just add the name of the person. Let's say for example Peter. And then you can add a description for the person, basically what occupation the person has. Let's say he's a photographer. We just put it in here, and then you can just show that in your videos. And I think it's a really good way to introduce the people that you have in your videos. Here you can also obviously adjust the sizes of those boxes as well in the text properties. And also down here in the settings, you have the option to choose different alignments like left, center or right. I prefer center the most. And then you also have position again, and you also have a distance slider for both boxes. One thing to mention when it comes to like position and scale and all those sort of like transform settings is that we have those in the Mogurts themselves, but you can also always use the normal transform settings in the effect controls panel back here. So basically you can also just change the size here, you can change the position, you can change the rotation, you can change anything also back in here with motion graphic templates as well. Then next up we have a counter. So this one is really cool if you want to count something. Like for example, you're doing a challenge or something in your videos and you want to count how many points a person has. Then you can just add the name of the person up here. Let's say Christl this time. And you just type it in. And then you can adjust the count of the person. So we have a slider here, so you can adjust that slider to the number you want to have. You can also just change the value manually, like let's say Peter has 15 points. But also if you want to use like a different format back here and not only numbers, then you can also just check this checkbox, which is called alternative text. And then here you can add something else, like for example, Peter has 5 out of 10 points or something like that. So yeah, you can just use it also in many different ways. And back here we also have, again, alignment, the distance between both boxes. But besides that, everything else is basically the same as with the others. Then as the next motion graphics template, we have the timer, which is probably one of my favorites, also one of the most difficult to develop. And yeah, if we just play it back, you see that we now have a small clock icon and a timer. And then at some point it just stops, it changes the colors, and then it animates out again. I think it's really, really cool to use that one for challenges as well, where you have a time which people need to see as well. So you can either use it as a timer, but you can also use it as a countdown. So I'm going to show you how both of them work. The first thing you're going to adjust here is the timer style, basically what the timer is going to look like. You can either select minutes and seconds or hours and minutes. I think that minutes and seconds make the most sense for most of the time. Then the reverse checkbox, we're going to talk about that in a second. The next one is the clock icon checkbox. If you uncheck that one, you only have the timer without the clock icon. I think it's really cool, so I would always just keep it there. With the next slider, you can adjust the clock icon speed. So if I bring that up, then the clock icon is going to be animated very quickly, while if I bring it down, then it is going to play back quite slowly. Then next up, we have the different colors. Here I made it quite easy. We have a primary color, a secondary color, and a stop color. So let's say primary color is blue. We have that here. We say secondary color is white. Then it's like this, and the stop color still remains red, let's say. And then, yeah, you just see that again, we can just change the colors just as we would do it with normal text. I'm just going to revert it back to the default colors. Down here, you also see that we have some text settings. You don't have to change anything in here. We just have that added so that we can adjust the text properties, which means you can still change the font, you can change the fork styles, and you can also change the size of the overall timer. This is why that text box is in here. You don't really need to add anything here. That's why it says only change the text properties below, and then you just change what your text style should look like. Then next up, we go down to the start time. So here you define the start time where the timer is going to, yeah, basically just starts in the beginning. You can select hours, minutes, and seconds. If you selected the time format minutes and seconds, it makes sense to obviously only change minutes and seconds. Let's say we want to start at 2 minutes and 33 seconds. And then it is going to animate in, it's going to start right at that time, and then it's just going to count up. And then at a specific point of time, it's going to stop. You can adjust that one down here. If we say the time should stop after 3 seconds, then it is obviously going to happen earlier. So it's going to happen right here and not after 5 seconds. You can just really easily adjust when it's going to stop. You can adjust the time when it's going to start. And as I said, you can also use it as a countdown. So basically for a countdown, you just click that reverse icon, and then if you play it back, it's just going to count down from the same starting point. And then after a specific time, now it's 9 seconds, then it's going to stop the time. Let's set it again to 3 seconds so I can show you. It animates in, it counts down, and after 3 seconds it stops, and then after the out animation duration, which is 8 seconds in that case, it's going to animate out again. So yeah, this is how you change everything here. Obviously, if you choose, for example, hours and minutes, then it's a little bit different because you just have to adjust a different start time. If you have hours and minutes, just bring down the seconds completely. Select the hours you want to have, let's say 4 hours and 32 minutes, sorry. And then, yeah, you basically have the same thing, but as I said, there's not going to change a lot because obviously it is hours and minutes. But in case you still want to use hours and minutes and you want to use it for a longer duration, we also included a second mogurt, which is called timer extended. So as you see, this timer is just like 1 minute long, But if you want to use it for a very long duration, we also have this one. The extended version is 10 minutes long. And yeah, that should really cover everything you want to do with those timers. And now let's actually look at the last motion graphics template of the pack, which is the end card, which is going to come up here. And this is an end card I included, which is basically my end card that I use on my YouTube channel. And it is the animation where here you can have your last video playing back, and then it's just going to animate over it with this really cool animation. It just reveals your own logo. Sometimes you see here in After Effects there, like if I just scroll through here, that you have this small box around it. Don't worry about that, like that is not going to appear in the actual rendered file. So yeah, you just have to ignore that. In here, we just also have the possibility to replace media again. Here you can add your own logo. So if I just select, for example, my logo, I drag and drop it on here, then I have my own logo and it's going to be animated the same way, which I think is really, really cool because basically have an end card in like 5 seconds. Here you can also adjust some things again, like the scale, like the position of your logo. I think it does really make sense to change much about it because it's going to be auto-aligned right from the start. Then you again have a checkbox for tint logo. If I deactivate that, then it's going to be in the original color. Here nothing is going to change because it is already yellow, but for example, if I have the Adidas logo again, it's going to be white, while if I click on the checkbox, it's going to be tinted. And then here you can adjust that tinted color, for example,